Oh my goodness. Today's episode is another one of my rants and comes directly from a couple of the things that I was listening to this week that were so boring. So I want to make sure you don't do a lot of these things. So I've got 10 different things I want to share with you today. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Course Creators HQ podcast, helping you navigate the latest techniques for creating and marketing online courses. And now, here is your host, Julie Hood.
Hey, I'm so glad you're listening today. This episode is so incredibly needed, and let me tell you why. So, yesterday I was on a 3-hour masterclass that the content I would say was pretty good. Like, it was pretty full of good ideas, good suggestions, but oh my gosh, the instructor literally had word for word on the slides, and he was reading off the slides. And I will tell y'all, I had to stop. It was such a distraction for me. I had to turn it off because what happens when you put the actual words that you're saying on the slide is it's a disconnect for the people who are listening to you, because on one hand they're trying to read your slides, but then on the other hand they're listening to you read. And if the speeds are different, it's just a disconnect in our brains. And it was giving me a headache. And I thought, this guy is supposed to be super, super, super incredibly successful and have made all of this revenue. Like, how can this be working? Because this is such a terrible way to teach. And I was looking, there were several different speakers and moderators in this class, and they all look so incredibly bored. So I hope it's working for him. I never wish any course creator to have a bad experience, but oh my goodness, please, please, please do not do that. And then the second thing that spurred today's episode is I was on a Facebook Live that was the replay, and we were 14 minutes in. I specifically looked at the clock, and there had been nothing useful or helpful for me yet. So I don't know about you guys, but I am incredibly busy. If I'm going to give someone some of my time to listen to what they are doing, they need to have something in the first 15 minutes where I'm like, ooh, that was good advice. Even if it's something I already know, they need to be getting to the point pretty quickly. So the rule number one for you is to get to the point fast. Don't be chit-chatting around and telling your life story in the first 15 minutes. Like, get to the point. Start giving me good stuff right off the bat. All right, so that's a number one as we're in our section about trying not to be boring, and that is to make sure that you speak to content within the first 15 minutes. Number two is that I want you to vary the tone of your voice. And this is a little bit tough if you don't do this normally. Like, if you are one of those folks who has a bit more of a steady, I don't want to say monotone, but very steady tone to the way you speak, it can be kind of lulling for the people who are listening to you. So every now and then you need to change the tone of your voice, get much more excited, change up the speed, raise your voice a little bit higher, and that way you're giving some interest to your listeners. So that's number two, vary the tone of your voice. Number three is to give an overview. And this way, your students know what's coming. So, for example, I told you the title of this, that I'm going to have 10 ways for you not to be boring. So, there's 10 of them coming. We're on number 3. You know where we're at. So, whenever you're doing a presentation, give a real quick overview so people know what's coming. That keeps them listening and keeps them expecting the rest of what's coming. Number 4 is to speak in sound bites. And this one is a little bit tougher because it takes a little while to sort of develop these sound bites that you're putting together, but they're short little pithy sentences that sort of grab people's attention, and they hear you and they're like, "Oh, that was a good point." So speak in sound bites whenever you can. Number 5 is if you are going to use PowerPoints, which I highly recommend. They can be really, really helpful, especially for instructors who are new, to sort of have some guidance as they're teaching. Use 1 point per slide and 1 image per slide. So 1 idea per slide, 1 image per slide, so that your students, it's a pretty fast pace. That will keep it from getting boring, as you've just got 1 thought per slide, so you're changing those slides up pretty quickly. Number 6 is a game that I really love to play, and that is, what can you cut? Like, go back, figure out, where am I being too wordy, too long, too boring, too boring, I gotta say it. So what can you cut out in order to make your messaging more succinct and more specific? Number 7 is to avoid what I call the, "well, I would hope so" comments. So whenever you're going through something, if something you're sharing is incredibly obvious and it's something that somebody would respond with, "well, yeah, I would hope so," when you're trying to share things, those are definitely things you can cut. And it takes a little experience of trying to identify these. But this was one of the lessons I learned very, very early on from a marketing training that I took. And they were talking about, eliminate the things that people are going to respond with, "well, I would hope so." So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. Number 8, maybe the most important one I'm going to share with you out of all 10 of these, and that is, do not, under any circumstances, read paragraphs of text off of your slides. I know there are people that do it. I know they're probably potentially successful with it, but I think it is just the worst way to teach your students. So if you need that level of detail, fine. Create the content for your training, for your courses at that level of detail if you need that. But don't have that be what you're sharing with your students. Have a separate set of slides that is the main concepts, the main ideas, so that they glance at a slide, they see a 3, 4, 5, 6, however many word concept along with an image, and then you speak to it. You can have all of those sentences in your notes and have them handy, but please don't do that. So number 8, do not read the text off of your slides. Number 9, and this is a bit more of an advanced one too, and that is to consider the level of detail that you're sharing when you're trying to put together a presentation or put together a lesson. So sometimes your lessons need to be higher level, more conceptual, more abstract, and giving people the high level ideas. And then sometimes they need to be really, really detailed and really, really specific. And if before you start, you think about, okay, what is the purpose of this part of my presentation? Am I trying to be high level or am I trying to be detailed? And when you know that ahead of time, it can really help you focus in what you're saying and focus in how you're putting the messaging together. So for example, this podcast, super detailed. I'm giving you very specific advice, and I wouldn't do this just off the cuff. I have my list of the 10 things I'm sharing with you, and I'm going through them one by one, and it's helping me stay focused because I've got that list of this very specific detail that I wanted to share with you. Okay, number 10 is when you are sharing testimonials and specifics about customers that you have worked with, don't just lump together a whole section of testimonials where you're just running on and on and on about this list of customers and what you've done. I want you to work them into the presentations that you're doing and do it almost as a case study, so that the first thing you do is talk about what the challenge was that this particular student has. And the reason I want you to start there is because it gives your audience a chance to say, ooh, I have that same challenge. I wonder what they did to solve it. And then as you continue talking through the specifics about that student, then you can talk about how you solved it, how you work through it, how you help them. All of that is much more compelling for your listener to hear the many different ways that you helped your student go from they had this challenge, here's what we did, here's how we solved it, here's what the result that they got, rather than the typical testimonial that just focuses on here's the result that I got and here's why it was so good. So number 10 is to make sure you have very specific case studies for your testimonials as opposed to just a list of them. And that's when you are doing a presentation. There are times like on sales letters and stuff where you'll just include the testimonial, and that's a little bit different. I'm talking about when you're doing more of a presentation that you can walk people through, and spreading those testimonials, case studies out throughout your presentation works way better than having a specific, okay, now we're going to talk about testimonials and all the people who love me. Spread those case studies out as you're doing your presentation and your teaching. Okay, so that's the 10, and I'll rerun through them very quickly for you. And you can also go to coursecreatorshq.com/60 and you can see this list and maybe print it off to keep it handy. Number 1 is to speak to your content and don't be boring. Number 2 is to vary the tone of your voice. Number 3 is to provide an overview as you're getting started. Number 4 is to talk in sound bites. Number 5 is to make sure with your PowerPoints you have one thought, one point, and one image per slide. And if you do it differently, I hope you have a reason. Number 6 is to think about, what can I cut? How can I make this more succinct? Number 7 is eliminate anything where someone would say, well, I would hope so. Number 8 is do not, under any circumstances, read the text off of your slides. Number 9 is to consider the level of detail. Is this a high level concept, or is this a very specific detail list of ideas that I'm sharing? Number 10 is don't just run through your testimonials with the end result. Explain them more as case studies with the challenges that your students were undergoing. And then I have one quick bonus one to share with you. And that one is, whenever you can, try to be funny. There's something about making your audience laugh that really, really helps with the engagement and helps them jump in. Now, I will tell you, I'm not very good at this one. My family and I joke that my brother got all of the funny genes and I didn't get any of them. So this is one for me to put on the list too. But I do think it makes a big difference when you're trying to connect. If you can add a little humor into your presentations, it will go a long way. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We have a bunch of stuff going on right now with Course Creators HQ. So thanks for listening to the end, and I'll tell you about a few of them. The first one is I've opened up a couple VIP days, and just a couple because I'm super busy. And if you're interested, either message me on Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me at juliehood@coursecreatorshq.com, and we'll take the next steps. There's a couple different things that I'll have you do before we get started to figure out if I'm a good fit and if I can help you out or not. So I want to make sure I sort of understand where your business is at. But if you're interested in that, having an all day, we can get a ton of stuff done in one day, VIP sort of situation, be sure and contact me. The other thing is, don't forget the askjuliehood.com. If you've got questions, hey, go leave a quick audio question. It's really simple. You push the button on your computer, and as long as you have a built-in microphone, I should be able to record your question, and then we can include it in a future episode. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for giving me a place to rant about the courses that I've been in this past week. They've definitely got my attention on some things that I want to make sure I mentioned to you. And thanks so much for listening and subscribing and following and reviewing. If you got anything helpful today, I'd really appreciate a 5-star review in your podcast app. It has me doing happy dances around my office, and it helps us get in front of more course creators. So thank you so much for being that course creator who is putting your dent in the world by helping your students, improving their lives, improving their businesses, improving their families. We need your expertise. So thank you for jumping into the deep end of the pool. And I will catch you next week with more ideas on how to improve and enhance and make your course business even better so that we can reach all of those students out there. Have a fantastic week.